All right. How's it going? I'm going to go ahead and take us off. There we are.
Perfect. Hey, hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Just happy that the tech worked out.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I'm joining from Safari and Google Chrome in order for me to use my camera for some reason.
Nice.
And
Smart move.
yeah, and sure enough, there's construction happening upstairs. So if you hear any buzzing, then I apologize in advance.
Nah, it's cool. It's cool. It's cool. Some things are out of our control, but we can do the best.
Exactly. Well, to kick things off, welcome everyone, and thanks for tuning in. And my apologies for getting us started a little bit late, but really excited for today's conversation. This is our first public event for 2026, and very happy to have Ryan here joining us. He is a UHI alumni and also the founder of Fiet Protocol. I'll let you handle all of your the rest of your intro, but just to give everyone a rundown of what we're going to be covering today. We're going to be getting to know Ryan a little bit about his background, his experience with UHI, and we'll talk about Fiat Protocol, which I believe was birthed out of UHI or has evolved since UHI. So, Ryan, I'll give you the floor to handle your intros, and would love to hear from you.
Sure. So my name is Ryan. I'm the founder of a project called Fiat and a company called Usher Labs that's building Fiat.
Yeah.
And we've been in the space for several years now. We've done research and development for the last year and a half, nearly two, regarding decentralized data storage and even mostly data verification. And now we're applying this cryptography we have on hand to DeFi, and it's materialized in the Fiat protocol. And in a nutshell, Fiat is allowing traders to essentially engage liquidity that resides inside of a market maker's bank account or a market maker's centralized exchange, and amplifying the liquidity we see on chain with liquidity that resides in other locations.
Awesome. Um, so thank you so much for that intro, by the way. But want to hone it back and get a little bit more insight about your experience before you entered UHI, and um, yeah, just want to know a little bit about your background as a builder. So how did you get into Web3, and what were you working on before you started building on Uniswap?
Sure. So before getting into Web3, I was running a custom software solution agency. And even before that, I was in various payment startups. And so I came from a background of trying to essentially build within the fintech space in the Australian ecosystem, and got a really good understanding about how credit cards work and how there's like five different various companies involved in facilitating one transaction on a credit card. Um, and so and then also the sort of regulatory hurdles involved in getting into fintech. And so starting to explore blockchains and cryptocurrencies was a bit of a fresh air with respect to what barriers are involved to managing money. And that was really enticing. And so I started getting involved in that. And the first thing I did get, touch on was, NFTs and marketing technology around how to amplify NFTs. And I was, it was really just a segue for me to learn about developing smart contracts. But that's essentially a background about where I come from and why I'm in Web3. Um, and yeah,
Awesome.
since then, it's been, like I said, mostly a quest to determine uh, one, if we're using data that's totally custom inside of smart contracts, how do we secure it? And then this evolved into identifying and sort of applying that in our own use case that we hold dear.
Yeah, I know, and I'm really excited. We will have some time very, very soon to go uh, deeper into Fiat and explore your own use case that you've been working on. But
Sure.
so when we're talking about your experience with UHI, I remember when we met in Buenos Aires, and you told me which cohort you were part of. Which cohort was that? If you could remind me.
I'm going to hopefully get this right. I think it was UHI 3, if I'm not
UHA
mistaken.
3. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so awesome. Well, we're actually kicking off UHI 8 in on Thursday, I believe. So you've come a long way. But if you can remember, what initially drew you into building on Uniswap, and what got you to, or how did you hear about UHI in general?
Yeah. Yeah. So we I think it's important to preface by stating, like, we before even diving into UHI, we were just starting to identify and get our feet wet with the DeFi aspect of things. And we knew that at the time, in this, scope of the plan of the protocol, we knew that we needed to facilitate exchange in some way, shape, or form. Like, the exchange primitive was necessary. And then it was actually through the internet computer ecosystem we got referred to UHI. So oddly, that was a random Slack message, and somebody in that ecosystem was also involved in it. And I saw a Twitter post, and I thought, you know what? It could be wise for me to investigate what Uniswap has in store with respect to extensibility. And UHI seemed like a pretty good platform from an educational perspective to getting involved. And so I thought, why not? I wouldn't, commit too much to it, but I thought if there was any value in it, it's worth investigating, and turned out to be the case.
Yeah, no, right on. So, and also, by the way, I love the internet computer ecosystem dudes. Are just really really great community. Um,
Mm.
but so when you did enter the incubator, did you? It kind of sounds like you did, but did you already have like a very clear idea of what it was that you wanted to build, or did like Fiat Protocol already kind of exist, or how did it come to take shape within the incubator?
Yeah. So, so at the time, what the fundamental problem we were trying, or the problem area we were trying to tackle, was, of course, foreign exchange fees. And the question we asked ourselves is, like, why haven't blockchains done what they've promised, which is lower that cost? Um, and at the time, it was a completely different solution to that problem. It was like almost imagine like a single token currency fund that's backed by many fiat currencies or something like this. And then under the hood, it would automate sort of the exchange dynamics and whatnot. Um, so it was a completely different approach to the solution, a lot heavier, I guess you could say, a lot more bloated. But part of that bloat was that exchange primitive, and like needing uh, you know the ability for people to stake single token rather than two tokens, or to delegate the ability for someone to manage an LP position on their behalf. And so there was like a set of features we needed out of that exchange that we took to UHI as the concept. And so in our project was like named a co-pool hook, something like this, or a surety hook, which was the name of the protocol at the time. And yeah, so it was like we had a set of features we wanted as a part of that architecture, and we took that set of features to UHI to experiment with. So at that time, Fiat wasn't really what it is now, but it's all been a honing process.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I do have a little bit more questions about Fiat, but I would love if you could show us around, or if you have a quick demo we can run through.
Sure. Uh, so I think it's worth noting that our protocol is actively being audited now, and
Awesome.
we're launching without a UI. So it's sort of going to be a bit more background MEV-ish at the start, and operating internally and with select partners, than it is going to be this public DEX that you can face. But
Right
what I
on.
can do, what I can do is sort of give you, show you some diagrams and maybe a bit of a UI example to illustrate how it's going to work.
Yeah, that would be great. And then for anyone who has questions in the audience, I will also be monitoring as well. So uh, we'll be taking some audience Q&A.
Cool.
That'd be great.
Let me just dive into this. Okay. Can you
Perfect.
see
And then
this?
and I will jump it on the screen. And there you are. The floor is yours.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm gonna start with a few diagrams here to illustrate exactly how fiat works with respect to Uniswap. So the first thing to note is fiat is amplifying liquidity that Uniswap recognizes. And what that means is that liquidity can reside not in Uniswap directly, but be recognized and accounted for when traders engage a market. The benefit of doing this is that we get more depth considered on that market and therefore lower fees for traders. The trade-off here is that that amount that's on chain is shifting. Right? Market makers need to settle when a trader demands that asset or settle in advance of that trader's demands. But to give you a walkthrough about how the pools are set up is in Uniswap, let's assume we have a token that's called Ryan Happy and an issuer creates it. Then in Uniswap, normally we have two tokens in a pool, USDC and Ryan Happy. Then what Fiat does is it creates a synthetic mirror of this native pool. It's a wrap of these tokens, and the wrap is what synthetically represents liquidity on chain, where that liquidity could be in a bank account. So USD can be in a bank account, but back a market that with USDC, because USD to USDC is simply, a transfer. And we can do this and secure this using this zk-TLS technology that's underpinning the protocol. And so most traders will just be engaging the normal pool, and in the background, there'll be some magic that takes place that actually carries a lot of the benefits of the synthetic market. So that's a bit of a walkthrough of the diagrams, and you can see here we can have many markets, and then on a more sophisticated trader's perspective, they can just directly engage the synthetic markets and just touch the synthetic assets. But I think from a UI perspective, we have something a little basic here to illustrate what exactly is going on. And you might recognize some UI aspects here. To give you a walkthrough of this UI, it is a visualization of a market making strategy on Uniswap. Essentially, the strategy is create a position, and then when the ticket advances to either boundary, just recreate it and make sure that the position is centered around the tick, right? So just carry the position along wherever the tick is, basically. We call this a rebalancing, strategy. And this visualization you can see here, you can make this position quite big. You can see it's asking me to rebalance, but if I increase the size of, the upper bound, it's safe because the tick is up there. But what's unique to Fiat is that despite the fact that we have this position, the tokens themselves, USDC, Ryan Happy, or USDT ARB, the underlying tokens are actually dynamically settled in or out, right? So you can have, 5% of the required amount, or Uniswap will require you to have 100 ARB locked in the pool. But Fiat will say, okay, you only need 5 ARB, and that 95 can remain elsewhere. And so here you can see, basically, in this UI, you can set almost like a target for how much of your position you want immediately settled up front. You can dynamically adjust what you settle up front, right? And when demand increases by traders, it basically tries to meet that threshold, right? So if someone does a massive swap, they're taking USDT out of the pool, then a market maker will settle to meet that demand. That's essentially how conceptually you can understand what Fiat is doing. The benefit of this is it's a lot more capitally efficient. I think one of the biggest problems AMMs face today is that like 90% of liquidity is not actively used at any given time. And so we get interesting hooks proliferating that try to reuse that liquidity in interesting ways, whether rehypothecating it inside of lending markets, or in our case, rehypothecating against other domains, other venues, like centralized exchanges, right? I wish I had more to show, something even a little simpler, but maybe the audience, if they're sophisticated traders, then they can understand a little bit about how the difference between capital lockup and just freely allocating capital without losing the benefit of LPing on Uniswap.
Yeah, I know. And also, I will say again, if anyone has any questions in the audience, feel free to chime in. But I am curious. So I know you mentioned, going into UHI and then coming out of UHI, you ended up with a completely different result, and Fiat has since evolved. I want to know a little bit more on what that process was like, and how did your team decide to just like hone in on these specific features upon launch?
Yeah. So yeah, but when we started, I think we were a little idealistic and a little ignorant to the landscape regarding regulations. I think we
Hmm.
wanted to, I don't want to say we wanted to touch fiat currency directly as a company ourselves, but uh, I didn't realize like how now like stablecoins are super regulated. So
Hmm.
if you're going to issue a freely transferable currency and it's going to function as a fiat-backed asset, there's a lot that needs to go into it. And if you want to do this for many countries, it's probably best to work with issuers in various regions than it is to do it directly. So that's like a first thing that was a quick realization where we
Hmm.
said, hey, maybe we should consider this. On top of that, I think what we started to then do is really start talking to market makers directly. And one of the key questions we asked is like, why aren't you engaging Uniswap? Like, why are DEXs a no-go for you? And the answers to this just slowly materialized into realizing that there are aspects of engaging Uniswap that are restrictive because it's designed that way. It's designed for passive liquidity
Hmm.
relative to engaging centralized exchanges, where it's a lot more, you get a lot more flexibility with how your money is allocated.
Right.
So yeah, I think it was just like trimming the bloat after all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And um, I mean, upon your upon demo day, which was, I mean, at some point last year to now, uh, what are some other hurdles that you've run into? Because it seems like what Fiat is now, it's a lot more of a polished product. So I would love to hear like now going into live. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, are there any other hurdles that your team has run into?
Yeah, I think like the biggest hurdle we've run into is mostly regarding like not forecasting how difficult developing the protocol would be.
Hmm.
Like one example is like getting into audits. You of course need to make sure your protocol is tested fully as much as possible. But
Hmm.
there is like other tests to consider as well, like fuzz testing or mutation testing. And I think we just didn't expect how long it would take to perform all of these tests, uh, and that we'd be doing them a lot internally. So
Hmm.
if for anyone building complexity into their protocols, that's one aspect. I think another is like, blockchains are restricted environments. So if you're engineering complex functionality for a blockchain, you have to really consider aspects like minimal iterations, unless it's like a specific blockchain. So like no loops, don't use loops too much. Um, or for example, making sure your contracts are fixed within a size limit and that they're architected accordingly to these restrictions. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, if we just had planned for this in advance, we should have completed engineering a lot earlier, but it has been difficult in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. And so as I mean, through through UHI and even with your continued developing after the cohort, I am curious, like, were there any like mentors or guides that really helped take your team to the next level when it comes
Mm.
to Fiat?
Yeah, I think fit through UHI, the biggest like unlock um, was mostly just the educational material regarding like how more sophisticated aspects of Uniswap work.
Hmm.
So in Uniswap, the entire thing operates in this flash accounting dynamic. This is a Uniswap v4 specific thing. And you get to tap into how those accounting paradigms work, and then the result of adjusting that accounting is affecting how tokens move, basically. So an example is if you wanted to add an additional fee, like you can. But then on top of that, if you wanted to override the price curve entirely, you also can. And just, I think making that extremely clear through the material was a game changer for us, because it allowed us to say, okay, let's go all in on Uniswap, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. We do have a question from the audience. I'll pop it up on stage. But Mark Maximus says, are there any key design patterns you used when developing the smart contracts?
Yes.
It's a good question.
That is a good question. I think the best design pattern we took, and we did this too late, so hopefully you can use this immediately, but there is a paradigm where you can, if you have a lot of state within a particular contract, like enough to fit a massive, like a big struct, you can centralize all of that state inside of a storage reference and then pass that around to linked libraries. And essentially through that paradigm where you have one orchestrator contract that's interfacing with many linked libraries and passing a single reference to these libraries, you can start to break open the limits of how much you can store in a contract and how much compute you can facilitate from a single contract. I think a great example of this was like, I think Bunny Protocol, despite what happened to their protocol, was engineered really well if you look at their smart contracts. So I advise that.
Yeah, awesome. I'll take that one down. And then any other questions before I get to any more? Because I know I love the technical deep dive questions, because there's only so many that that I can get into. But let me see. I'm just jumping into my questions. I know, and actually, I kind of want to get back to this, because I know that we talked a little bit about this for when we met in Buenos Aires, and being that there is like a new like cohort starting up, I think, this week, when it comes to like UHI. I mean, I've asked you like what your hot takes were. I remember these conversations, but like, what are like, I guess, like 3 key tips that you would give to builders that are entering UHI and they want to work on a hook or a project that is as sophisticated as Fiet?
Yeah.
What would you say?
I would say, like, you know, I think sophistication is a result of just circumstances. Like, if you can solve a problem simply, do it. Like, do things as simple as possible. Start that way, and if complexity arises along the way, then it does. So yeah, I think if you have a cool idea, or you want to try something, or you just want to flex your ability, that's also viable. Like, I think one underrated aspect of UHI that I mentioned to another Atrium team member was, like, this, as developers, or as teams start to build on Uniswap, the talent pool for building on Uniswap is actually quite restricted. There's a lot. I mean, building a smart contract is one thing, but understanding this flash accounting dynamic and really trying to make sure security exists at the atomic state of a transaction, like, this is difficult stuff. So if you can prove you can do it, like, I'm sure there are teams, if you do not start your own startup, that are interested in talking to you. So if you just want to flex your ability, I totally recommend it as well. So I think that's like 2 points.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to, like, just from your experience, like, how do you balance shipping something that's like usable versus continuing to like refine the design, or having to continuously reiterate?
Yeah. I think I'm not perfect at that at all. Like, as an engineer, I have like the biggest dilemma where it needs to be perfect before it releases, but then the business mind comes in. It's like, it needs to release today, right? Or it needs to release yesterday. So I think and this really comes down to like startup, I guess, theology, where it's like, if your first version offers some amount of value, then there's the ability to iterate on it. If you already are selling and you have business relationships, then you can sort of maybe skip the bad version. But if you're going
Mm-hmm.
direct to consumer, I think minimum viable product is, a good way to sort of conceptualize that. If a feature is probably not going to be used, it's probably worth deleting.
Mm-hmm.
So deleting things is part of the process, and trying to just ship something that's super that can be used immediately is good. And I guess one great quote is like action produces outcome. So if you push something and you can iterate on that, like in the form of contracts, it's a little hard to do this. So
Right.
for protocols, if you can build smart contracts that evolve, not through like the proxy upgradable patterns, but more so like adding contracts that interoperate, etc., that's great. If you're building a massive, like a complex protocol, then I would advise actually going after minimum viable validation, right? So like I said, if there's
Mm-hmm.
business relationships that validate what is being built, or if there is a way to revenue, right, through an experiment, a tiny experiment that you conduct, then that is the way to sort of evaluate whether or not it's worth committing to. And this is that sort of like, I guess these approaches are sort of what we've incorporated. And I'm not an
Yeah.
expert. I'm not like a crazy expert guy here. So take my
No one's an expert at the end of
advice.
the day. So,
Yeah.
but this is all helpful, very helpful advice, especially for those listening to the audience. But we do have a couple questions that came in, and these questions are great. But how are you able to get accountable partners from team to growth? Is this one?
Yeah. I think with respect to partners, you're talking more so like, people on my team or third parties. Um,
I believe both.
Both. Yeah. So just how do
Yeah.
you get accountable people to help you build something awesome?
Yeah.
Uh, that's
Yeah.
how I'm going
Let's
to
hear
take
your
that
team's
question.
origin story. Yes. Yes. That
uh,
works.
yeah. I'm sort of just going to be like rattle off like things that awesome entrepreneurs have said. So this is like, I'm paraphrasing someone named Naval Ravikant, but basically said you want to find somebody with high integrity, and high skill, right?
Mhm.
Someone who, if you're finding an engineer, you want to find that engineer that's enthusiastic about what they're building, that's enthusiastic about being a part of a team, understands that you can't do everything alone. Like this is a big dilemma that a lot of people face. It's team efforts that build things. And also just developing good relationships with people over time, I think, is important. Like I had because we've been developing with our team, which is a small team, but nearly for 2 years, through 2 and a bit years for some people, we've been through ups and lows, and even through failures, we've continued to work together. And because of that, it's, I think, developed or strengthened the sort of bond we carry. Um,
Mhm.
with respect to like growth, again, I would say the same outside of engineering for team that is facilitating any sort of marketing or BD on behalf of a company. Um, yeah, being a part of something, it's important to cultivate that.
Mhm.
And for third parties, it's a little harder. That's why I think there's generally some advice where you don't want to go to a dev shop. You want to have in-house engineers, or you don't go into a marketing agency is fantastic if you have like a really specific, like, I guess, jurisdictional approach, or an approach for a geography it's out of your reach, like targeting, Africa or Asia or something like this. I think
Mhm.
agencies work great there. And then conversely, if your company is based in Asia. But you also want to have someone who's handling that marketing, who's, again, maintains high integrity with their work, who wants to see the company win. And it really just comes down to judgment regarding how you determine that.
Mhm.
Just-
I know.
yeah,
Hopefully that covers that one. I know you had mentioned also while you were going over Fiat is that you were speaking to different market makers to get their input. How
yeah.
did how did these conversations come into play, or um, were you going to events? Were you like where were you finding these market makers to receive feedback from? That's another thing.
Yeah. Uh, I think it's a combination of luck and putting yourself out there. So I
Mm-hmm.
think like conferences are a great example because it's an aggregation of all the people in the industry in like one
Mm-hmm.
place. But then like you actually have to go out and be in the right places while you're there. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
not you can't just rock up to the front of the main event and then like hope it works. Uh, so yeah, trying to like do everything you can to be in the right places within that opportunistic window of place and time is, I
Mm-hmm.
think, the difficult but necessary thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then through being in those places, you can then maybe meet somebody through a friend, or maybe you do work with one person and they know a market maker. So referrals are another opportunity. And market makers are generally open to talk as well. There's only a very few that maybe do prop trading and don't handle external parties that don't want to
Mm-hmm.
talk. But because they are service providers, they generally are open to talk about a few things. So um, same set. I think VCs are a little different though, because everyone wants money, so it's like they get a little shy. That's a bit.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that happen as well. Awesome. So then we have another question here. Is there anything else you wish you would have done during the incubator program but didn't, and you would recommend the next UHI alumni to do so?
To do. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, hmm. Maybe take more time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to be fair, I took a sufficient amount of time to investigate and learn how things work so that we could then engineer. But the actual time
Mm-hmm.
I spent engineering was like insufficient. And I got lucky to just get the POC out. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but in order to like really get it as good as I wanted to, it was like a real hackathon that I did myself. So I would
I
say,
remember you sharing this. It was like you really built it up in a matter of, I don't know how many hours you spent, but you did it.
yeah, no, I think I spent like a weekend and a bit actually engineering, but I spent a week
Yeah.
prior like doing research and investigating and learning and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I would say like really like plan it out. That way you're not, if something emergency pops up and you're in the middle of a hackathon, it's like you prepared, or you don't have to do a hackathon in case an emergency happens. So it's
Right.
just lower your risk of failure, or increase your odds of success. Yeah.
That's good. I like that. Um, and then I guess we didn't really get to cover this too much, but or actually we did touch on this, I think. Um, but and she says thank you for answering that question. I'll pop that up there. But can you tell us like a little bit about what is next for Fiat Protocol, and like what's on the roadmap for? And I know we understand what's coming up next, but where do you see Fiat in uh, a year from now, for example?
Yeah. Uh, from a year from now, our North Star is essentially to bring stablecoin foreign exchange onto Uniswap. So
Hmm.
working with various stablecoin issuers and market makers across various jurisdictions will help us do this. Um,
Hmm.
and this is already starting, except it's important that the technology we ship to these partners so that they can facilitate a great experience is functional and secure and so on. And so right now we're in that process of facilitating that. And to do that, we're going to be rolling out the technology and operating it internally. We're going to dog food our own market making tech, uh,
Hmm.
because putting your money where your mouth is, sort of thing. And yeah, so a year from now, we want to have various FX markets. We also want to support various crypto to crypto markets where it's viable. We think that
Hmm.
through the capital efficiency, we can lower some cost there. Ultimately, though, we'd love
Without a
to
doubt.
work with DEX aggregators like Uniswap X, and various others to surface our markets inside of their routing, market
Hmm.
routing. but yeah, I think it's just a matter of like getting the tech out and continuing to work with partners.
Yeah, right on. This question kind of scales it back, but why did you get into DeFi? I think we touched on this a little bit earlier, but
Yeah,
let's
I
hear it.
can I can be as simple as possible and say uh, you can swap tokens for less than 5 cents, and then tokens represent real money. Whereas
Hmm.
I've had to pay $80 to transfer a bunch of money from my bank account before.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I remember those days with like the early days of Ethereum or like gas fees. I think when Ethereum was still like, or when we just had like layer ones having to pay like $60 in gas fees for $10 of Ethereum,
yeah,
essentially.
yeah. Ethereum's slowly evolving. I like the roadmap regarding the whole ZK incorporation.
Hmm.
But yeah, in a nutshell, I think DeFi is like imagine high finance at your fingertips. Like before you had to be a certain person at a bank to be authorized to to trade options or futures. Now anyone can. So it's like democratized finance. I think is extremely cool. And now
Yeah.
it has propagated like a gambling culture, which sucks. And I warn
Yeah.
everybody not to gamble. But I think like a lot of these tools are tools. So if, for example, you're a money manager, even if it's a small amount of money, but you're based in some jurisdiction with bad financial rails, you can still, for example, potentially borrow a currency, sell it in order to short it, right? So I'm
Hmm.
ideally borrowing some fiat currency. Now I can immediately sell it based on my borrow as a method of shorting that currency.
Hmm.
I don't know where else you can short fiat currency. I guess currency futures exist, but only for G7 currencies. So it's like, yeah, it's leveling the playing field, DeFi, leveling the
Yeah.
playing field against like what TradFi had always been able to sort of do.
Yeah. Agreed. Um, I mean, my question for you is because you mentioned something here is like that. Yeah, you like to advise a lot of your friends, like don't get into Web3 to gamble, or don't get into the gambling aspect. For builders, I mean, what advice do you think is commonly like overused or maybe misleading for early DeFi builders or for early Web3 builders?
Mm. I think early on, I don't know if this is still the case, but I think early on there was like a religious like a religious tie to various ecosystems. Whereas I think
Hmm.
now it's getting a lot. I think being
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
being in an ecosystem is good. But before it was like you're either a Bitcoin maxi or you're an enemy.
Yeah.
And I think like breaking out of that and saying, okay, no, this tech is good for this, that tech is great for
Hmm.
that. Um, I think is important.
Yeah.
And then also speaking to people is important. Like it's easy for an engineer. I've had done this firsthand to just build in a dark room because it's fun
Hmm.
sometimes. Um, but then fun turns to pain if people aren't giving you feedback.
Right.
Yeah.
Agreed. Someone else has a question in the audience here. He said, is Fiat Protocol source code open, or are you waiting to release or waiting
Someday.
for release date or something? Yeah.
Yeah, good question. Uh, we will be open sourcing our contracts, our smart contracts, after we've facilitated internal operation and once we have a public set of market makers on board.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the rollout's going to be very slow. It's not going to be like some. It's not it's almost like we're not releasing it in a consumer-like fashion. It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
it's B2B. It's a B2B piece of technology. So I think ideally within 6 months we'd like to release it. We're gearing up for it to be open source. There will be some aspects of things that are open source piece by piece. So, for example, we have like a piece of open source technology that lets you tap centralized exchange APIs without being restricted to a particular programming language. Like it's a small service that proxies a request at centralized exchanges. Things like this, like tooling is going to be open source. The contracts will follow on a particular schedule.
Right on. Good question. Perfect. So as we are getting ready to wind things down here, what question do you wish more people asked you about Fiat?
If I'm a token issuer, what do I get out of Fiat that I can't get elsewhere?
Ooh, can you answer that?
Yes. So for token issuers, I think listing on a decentralized exchange now comes with the need to bootstrap retail liquidity, and bootstrap a bunch of liquidity from investors everywhere. And good for some tokens because they have that community, they have that reach, but bad for others because they now need to over incentivize for people to hold their token. So with Fiat, what we hope to bring to that side of things is the ability for a token issuer to just bring their favorite market maker, and that's it. So no need to release 10% of your token supply just to pull off a pool, just for your investors to jump to the next incentive. But instead having like a really liquid market facilitated by someone who's professionally involved in doing it, which is what tokens do on centralized exchanges. So we're trying to bring this, stability of centralized exchange markets as well to for token issuers on decentralized exchanges.
Right on. Perfect. And on that note, if for those who are listening, if anyone tuned in late, if there's like one takeaway from this conversation, or what would your like headline be for today's conversation?
Jeez.
I know I'm giving you the tough ones before we shut it down.
Yeah. Solving foreign exchange by using blockchains, and
I like that.
how UHI played a role.
Perfect. We'll put that. I'll put that on the thumbnail as well.
Good.
Perfect.
I'm gonna listen. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah. Oh, I will. I'll do like a little banner thing with that exact statement as well.
Okay. I'm gonna cringe at these answers when I listen to this.
Oh no.
If I listen to
this
this.
is great.
Okay.
No, this has been such a great conversation. And for those listening in the audience, I know I've tagged you on Twitter and such, but how can anyone stay up to date with the latest on Usher Labs or Fiat?
Yeah. So current Twitter account is Usher_Web3. This is where we release any sort of news. We'd love to be more frequent, but over the last few months and moving a little bit forward, we're just super heads down on other aspects of the business. But that's where we share some news. And then on Discord, you can contact us directly. We do share things there, exclusive things there. We have something running like free tickets to an event in Middle East. If you guys, any of you are based there. So yeah, come check it out. It's go.usher.so/Discord.
Go.usher. I'm just going to type it in the chat.
Yeah.
So that others can follow along. I'll pop it up here. Is this URL correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
Woo. Oh, perfect. Awesome. Well, if nobody has any other questions from the audience, we'll go ahead and close this up. But Ryan, it was so great catching up with you and getting to hear a little bit more about your story and hear what's happening next with Fiat. I'm super excited for you and your team.
Thank you, Annalise. Yeah, it was a pleasure to be here, and thank you all for the comments. And we're certain we want to deliver.
Absolutely. And yep, and if anyone has any additional questions as you're listening along, then you can hit up Ryan on Twitter, Ryan_Soury, correct?
Yes.
Did I get that right? All right,
Yep.
Perfect. Well, Ryan, I hope you have a wonderful morning. It's morning over there, correct?
Yeah, I'm just about to start my day. 8 a.m.
There we go. 8 a.m. You have a wonderful day, and everyone have a wonderful rest of your afternoons, evenings, wherever you are in the world. And we will catch you all next time. All right. Thanks, everyone.